Hey guys, welcome back to part 4 of our series on the Monster Hunt game using the canvas and a few other techniques. In this part we're going to look at the keyboard event handling, so detecting the key events that we want to use to move our hero player around and how we deal with those. And basically what we're listening for is we're going to use a key down event, so that when one of our arrow keys, left, right, up and down, gets held down, our hero object moves around in that direction, and when the key is released, he stops. So the way we do that is by using a key down event, and then we use a key up event when the key is released that basically deletes the key down event and stops the movement in that way. So that's the sort of premise and the method that we're going to use to achieve this. So let's get started. And the first thing that we need to do here, we're working below our game objects and before our game loop. We're going to do this using an object. We know it's an object because it's got the object literals, the curly braces, to define it as a variable. That's how we define an object variable, using those curly braces, and this object is called keys down. Now, to that object, we want to attach an event listener. So we know about event listeners because we've used them before. We want to put an event listener using the key down event, and what we want that event, or what we want to happen when that event is triggered, is an anonymous function to run. And what we want to do is add to our keys down object that we created here the code of the key that was pressed. Now, E is like a universal inbuilt variable in all modern browsers that passes from HTML the key or the event that occurred, that has triggered this code to run. So we want to say we've got a key and we've got a code, and that we're setting that value to true, so that movement is going to be able to run. We're actually going to make it move a little bit further down in our update function when we get to that. But that's our event listener. We've attached an event listener, or a key down event, on the particular key code that has triggered this event. And we'll look at how those codes work in a little bit. But we also need a second event listener for when the key is released, and that's called a key up event. Process is pretty much identical. We're adding an event listener, this time for the key up event, and we're running an anonymous function again, but this time we're deleting the keys down, or the key code, from our keys down object, so that will no longer be there, and therefore the movement will stop. So that's our basic premise, and it's a pretty simple way to handle this kind of movement. It's not too difficult to do, very easy to replicate, and we can actually use this method on any set of keys, and we'll see how we apply that to some keys later on, because that happens down in one of our further functions further down. But what we also need to be able to do here is a function, because we're almost getting ready to start to do our update function. We need something that's going to position our objects, our hero object and our monster object, on the canvas for the very first time. Okay? And what we're going to do is have those objects positioned. If I just refresh to make sure that's new, yep. Our hero object is pretty much going to be positioned central in the middle of our canvas every time. This guy though, our monster, he's going to be random. He's going to be positioned in random positions every time the game gets loaded. So he's going to go to different spots all the time. So we want to make that happen with a new function that we're going to include. We'll put it just below all of our keys down stuff before our basic game loop function happens, and we're going to call it reset. So essentially, when the game needs to reset, when it's over, or every time we catch the monster, in fact, our hero is going to return, or every time the game is reloaded, really. No, it's not going to be every time he catches a monster and keeps going. But when our game first loads and when it reloads, we want our hero object to be positioned in the middle of our canvas. So we give him X and Y coordinates, which are canvas width divided by 2 and canvas.height divided by 2, and that will basically put him pretty well central in the middle of our canvas area. But our monsters, getting them randomly placed around our canvas, needs the math.random function, which we know about. We've used that a few times. We know what that will do, give us a random number, and we're going to multiply that by the width of the canvas, and we're going to subtract 64 pixels from that, those values are, well, that's basically twice the width of the monster object. They're 32 by 32 pixels, so that we don't get him positioned into the out into the bushes like so that we keep him out of these bushes here on the end as much as we sort of can. Those values you can experiment with. You can make them less or more till you get something that you're happy with whenever we refresh and he gets positioned, just so that you can see that wherever he's gone that time, he's hidden somewhere now. I'm not sure where he is, but so we might need a bit of a tweak of those values, but we'll start with that and see where we go. But that's so that we're shortening the canvas width and height wise to account so that we don't get monsters placed off the screen or too close to the edges. But our starting point for those is 32. So our initial X and Y value set at 32 means we're basically having a starting point kind of up here, just above the tip of the M, and then we're working it out randomly, placing it across the canvas using our X value and somewhere down using our Y value. So that's kind of how we're randomizing the placement of those objects. And these 64 values here are probably things you might be able to tinker with a little bit until you get something that you're quite comfortable with. But that's going to, when we get to the point of starting our game going, we'll call that function for the first time to position those objects initially. So in the next phase, we're going to start to have a look at our update function now and start actually getting things happening and positioned on our canvas. So we'll see you back for that.